Many people love the Second Amendment. They love to quote Jefferson saying, "The blood of patriots must be spilled to water the tree of liberty," and that he said that there should be a revolution every 20 years to keep the government in line. America has a special place in the world. Its revolution is a rare occurrence in the world that succeeded out of a lot of luck and is not the standard in terms of revolutions. It had varying factors that helped it succeed, including the fact that Britain was fighting two wars, one in America and one in India, and Britain believed India to be much more valuable to them, so they sent their best generals to India, and America got General Cornwallis. While Washington was a brilliant general, the revolution would have been crushed if Britain hadn't overstretched itself. One of the problems with the American Revolution was that only the minority were interested in the revolution. The majority were pretty well okay with being British. They disliked King George and his unfair taxes, but not enough to revolt. The Continental Army would have been considered insurgents and terrorists had Karl Rove been British during that time period. Lucky for the people, new media technology is always best exploited by the commoners and fringe people, and newspapers were being used to their full extent in propaganda to push the war. America also had another big advantage. They weren't overthrowing state governments, only the impressive imperial rule of the British Empire. Several states already had constitutions and voting, so there was little power vacuum occurring when the British let them go. The French and Russian revolutions, however, were bloody and completely restarted all forms of government, causing anarchy and a ton of trial and error in implementing new types of government. Many times tyranny, beheadings, and gulags were required and tried in revolutions before they were able to settle into a more peaceful and stable form of government. Governments, or any political or economic system, are ridiculously complex and require many years of tweaking to fix the problems that were made on the fly at the beginning of the government, assuming they didn't ultimately collapse and have to create a new government. If there was another American Revolution, you would need the entire state to go to war, or all hell would break loose in creating a new form of government. Thomas Paine believed fully in the idea of bloody revolution and helped the French overthrow their monarchy and even served as an interim legislator. However, because of the instability, no one trusted anyone because of the power vacuums created, and Paine was accused of being a traitor and was nearly sent to the guillotine. Regions fought against each other just like in Iraq and Afghanistan, as new resources and powers look very tempting to grab and justify why your region or ethnicity should get more power. If the individual people were to go to war against the US government and they succeeded somehow, they would have chaos on their hands, as there is nothing tried and true to replace the government, unless it was a mass coup, and even then, any changes in law cause a change in dynamics in terms of economics and social pressures. Predicting changes in government is a lot like predicting weather patterns. One slight little change that isn't taken into account can cause a major and almost devastating change. If a coup occurred, they would automatically change several laws, causing damage to the existing equilibrium. The Iranians had a revolution from the Shah, and it was bloody and chaotic. This is the reason they aren't revolting against Ahmadinejad right now. They do not want to set their country back in terms of economics and instability just for the sake of revolution. Mass demonstrations and slow perseverance has weakened the brutality of the government and has enraged sympathies among many people who before were either fine with the status quo, did not have any idea on how to change things, or were oblivious to the underhanded tactics used. One of the most laughable arguments for the Second Amendment is that the people should have guns and militias so they can rise up against the government and protect themselves from the government. That sounds very noble to be sure, but thanks to American patriotism and fear of other nations, we have the biggest and most technologically advanced military on the planet. Anyone who thinks that their militia can fight against the US military with IEDs, rocket launchers, and guns is laughable at best. This would not be a revolution, but an insurgency. The US military has Predator drones, heat-seeking missiles, Apache helicopters, nuclear weapons, tanks, aircraft carriers, as well as an arsenal of non-lethal weapons to incapacitate you to prevent civilian casualties. Unless you have the military or at least your state National Guard on your side, your little militia is at best cute. Look at how easily the Hutari were demolished by the police. Other militias are much bigger, but still dwarfed by the power and tech of our military. If you like revolution, you'd better vote to reduce military spending. Oh wait, that would be unpatriotic. Yay, emotional decisions over logical ones. Another big reason for Jefferson's enthusiasm for bloody revolution was probably because Gandhi had not yet been born. Mahatma Gandhi believed in the concept of passive revolution, using media, civil disobedience, and publicity as its weapon instead of guns. The change is slower and much less macho, but it does not end up with absolute chaos and anyone but the protesters getting hurt. The ability to protest is the ability to get your own blood spilled for what you believe without getting persons who disagree with you getting hurt as collateral damage as well. The point of a protest is to educate people about your cause and change their minds. The government does not listen to protesters, but it does listen to voters, and if you can convince enough voters of your cause, change will come. Maybe slowly, but wars are slow too, with much more damage to people, life, mental health, due to things like post-traumatic stress disorder, and social and economic stability. Even after revolution, it usually takes about 10 to 20 years before there has to be a complete overhaul of the system once it has been better analyzed and assessed. The U.S. Constitution wasn't even written until 1788, 13 years after the Declaration of Independence. Prior to this, the U.S. was under the Articles of Confederacy, but it was insufficient as states almost went to war with each other until the Constitution was set in place. Since the liberation of India and Pakistan, all successful revolutions have been passive revolutions. The breakup of the USSR and the Eastern Bloc were all caused by the peaceful, non-violent revolutions, and all bloody revolutions have tended to have dictators replacing the previously oppressive regime. Bloody revolutions seem awesome, and protesters seem like pussies, but very rarely does a revolution ever work to benefit humanity. The purpose of a protest is to educate others about your cause or way of thinking. If you cannot win your fellow citizens, then your revolution was pointless, and it will just breed anger and spawn counter-revolutions, especially since you have now proven that a revolution or coup can work. This is what has been happening in Africa and South American nations, and you see how well those work out. If you try to change something in society without at least the majority supporting you, they will view you as a bad person and try to get rid of you. Even more so if you're trying to change things through the barrel of a gun, and their family becomes collateral damage. Then you will be extremely vilified by the public. If you have convinced the majority, then you won't need a revolution. It may be slow, it may be boring, and it may be stressful, but only through freedom of speech, education, protests, and civil disobedience will your cause eventually prevail, assuming your ideas aren't just batshit insane. I think people who want revolution are like dogs chasing cars. They don't know what they would do with it if they ever succeeded.